continued page 120. When Cotard arrived at the doctor's the next day, Tarot and Rio were talking about an unexpected cure involving one of the doctor's patients. 1 out of 10, he was lucky, Tarot was saying. Oh well, said Cotard, then it wasn't the plague. They assured him that it really had been the disease. It can't be so if he recovered. You know as well as I do, the plague is merciless. On the whole it is, said Rio, but if you persevere, you can have some pleasant surprises. Cotard laughed. It doesn't seem like it. Have you seen this evening's figures? Tarot, who was giving the man of means a kindly look, said that he knew the figures and the situation was serious, but what did that prove? It proved that they needed still more emergency measures. You've taken them already. Yes, but one has to take them on his own account. Cotard looked at Tarot without understanding. The other man explained that too many people were not doing anything, and that the epidemic was everybody's business, and that they all had to do their duty. The voluntary health teams were open to all. It's an idea, said Cotard, but it won't do any good. The plague is too strong. We'll find out, said Tarot patiently, when we've tried everything. Meanwhile, Rio was at his desk copying some figures. Tarot was still looking at the man of means, who was shifting about in his chair. Why don't you join us, Monsieur Cotard? Cotard got up, looking offended, and picked up his round hat. It's not my job. Then, with a tone of bravado, in any case, the plague is doing me a favor. I don't see why I should get involved in getting rid of it. Tarot struck his forehead, as though suddenly realizing something. Of course, I'm forgetting. He would be arrested otherwise. Cotard started and grabbed the chair as if about to fall over. Rio had stopped writing and was looking at him in a solemn, interested way. Who told you that? Said the man of means. Tarot seemed surprised and said, You did, or at least that's what the doctor and I thought you meant. And while Cotard stammered out an incomprehensible stream of words, suddenly overcome by an uncontrollable fit of rage, Tarot added, Don't get excited. Neither the doctor or I will denounce you. Your background doesn't concern us. And then, we've never much liked the police. Come now, sit down. The man of means looked at his chair, hesitated, and sat down. After a moment he sighed. It's an old story, he agreed, which they dredged up. I thought it was all forgotten, but someone talked. They called me in and told me to remain available until the inquiry was over. I realized that in the end they would arrest me. Is it serious? Tarot asked. Depends what you mean. It's not a murder anyway. Prison or forced labor? Cotard seemed very downcast. Prison, if I'm lucky. Then, after a short pause, he went on emphatically. It's a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. But I can't stand the idea of being taken in for that, separated from my home, my way of life, all the people that I know. I see, said Tarot. That's why you had the idea of hanging yourself. Yes, a silly idea, of course. Rio spoke for the first time and told Cotard that he could understand his anxiety, but that perhaps everything would work out. Oh, for the time being, I know I have nothing to fear. I see that you are not going to join our team, said Tarot. The other man, twisting his hat between his hands, gave him a hesitant look. Don't hold it against me. Certainly not. But at least, Tarot added with a smile, try not to spread the microbe knowingly. Cotard protested that he didn't want the plague. It had come out of its own accord, and it was not his fault if it temporarily got him out of a mess. When Rambert arrived at the door, he added with a lot of emphasis, In any case, what I think is that you won't achieve anything. Rambert learned that Cotard did not know Gonzalez's address, but they could always go back to the little cafe. They arranged a meeting for the next day. When Rio indicated that he would like to know what's going on, Rambert invited him, with Tarot, to come to his room that weekend at any time of the day. In the morning, Cottard and Rambert went to the little cafe and left a message for Garcia to meet them that evening, or, if that was impossible, the next day. In the evening, they waited in vain, but the following day Garcia was there. He listened to Rambert's story in silence. He had not been informed, but he did know that the whole district had been put out of bounds for 24 hours while the police made house-to-house searches. It was possible that Gonzalez and the young men had been unable to get past the roadblocks. The only thing that could be done was to put them in touch with Raoul. Of course, that would not be done. It could not be done overnight. I see, said Rambert. We'll have to go back to square one. The day after next, at a corner of a street, Raoul confirmed Garcia's supposition. It would be necessary to establish contact with Gonzalez again. 2 days later, Rambert was having lunch with the footballer. It's ridiculous, he said. We should have settled on some way of contacting one another. Rambert could only agree. Tomorrow morning, we'll go in and see the kids and try to arrange it all. The next day, the kids were not at home. A meeting was arranged for the following day at noon on the Place du Lycée, and Rambert went home with a look on his face that struck Thoreau when he met him that afternoon. Something wrong? Thoreau asked. It's having to start over again, Rambert said. And he repeated his invitation. Come over this evening. That evening, when the two men came into Rambert's room, he was stretched out on the bed. He got up and filled some glasses that he had ready. Rio, taking his drink, asked if things were going well. The journalist said that he had once more completed a full round, got back to the same point, and would soon have his final meeting. He drank and added, Of course they won't come. You mustn't make a regular thing out of it, said Thoreau. You still haven't understood, Rambert replied, shrugging his shoulders. What haven't we understood? The plague. Ah, said Rio. You haven't understood that it's all about starting again. Rambert went into a corner of the room and put on a little record player. What's that record? Asked Thoreau. I know it. Rambert replied that it was St. James's Infirmary Blues. In the middle of the record, they heard 2 shots ring out in the distance. A dog or an escape, said Thoreau. A moment later, the record ended, and the sound of an ambulance became clearer, got louder, passed under the windows of the hotel room, decreased, and then finally died away. That record is not funny, said Rambert, and I've heard it at least 10 times a day. Do you like it that much? No, it's the only one I have. And a moment later, I tell you, it's about starting again. He asked Rio how the health teams were working. There were 5 of them in operation, but they hoped to form others. The journalist was sitting on his bed and appeared to be concentrating on his nails. Rio looked at his stocky, powerful shape on the corner of the bed. He suddenly became aware that Rambert was looking at him. You know, Doctor, he said, I've thought a lot about your organization. If I haven't joined you, there's a reason for it. I think I could still put my life on the line. Anyway, I think I could still put my life on the line. I fought in Spain. On which side? Thoreau asked. On the losing one. But since then I've reflected a bit. On what? On courage. I know now that man is capable of great actions, but if he is not capable of great feeling, then he doesn't interest me. One has the impression he is capable of anything, said Thoreau. Not at all. He's not capable of suffering or of being happy for long, so he's not capable of anything worthwhile. He looked at them, then asked, Come, Thoreau, are you capable of dying for love? I don't know, but I doubt it now. There. Yet you are capable of dying for an idea, and that's patently obvious. Well, I've had enough of people who die for ideas. I don't believe in heroism, and I know that's easy, and I've found out that it's deadly. What interests me is living or dying for what one loves. Rio had been listening closely to the journalist. Still looking at him, he said gently, "Man is not an idea, Rambert." The other man jumped up from the bed, his face contorted with emotion. "He is an idea, and a very brief one, just as soon as he turns away from love, and that's the trouble. We are no longer capable of love. Let's resign ourselves, Doctor. Let's wait until we are capable of it, and if it's really not possible, wait for the general deliverance without paying at Harrow's. As for me, I'm not going any further." Rio stood up with a look of sudden tiredness. "You're right, Rambert, quite right, and I wouldn't want to divert you from what you intend to do, for anything in the world, because it seems to me good and proper. But I have to tell you this. The whole thing is not about heroism. It's about decency. It may seem a ridiculous idea, but the only way to fight the plague is with decency." "What is decency?" Rambert asked, suddenly serious. "In general, I can't say, but in my case, I know that it consists in doing my job." "Ah," said Rambert furiously, "I don't know what my job is. Perhaps I really am wrong to choose love." Rio stood in front of him. "No," he said emphatically, "you are not wrong." Rambert looked thoughtfully at them. "I suppose the two of you have nothing to lose in all this. It's easier to be on the right side." Rio emptied his glass. "Come on," he said. "We've work to do." And he went out. Thoreau followed, but seemed to have second thoughts just as he was leaving. He turned to the journalist and said, "Do you know that Rio's wife is in a sanatorium a few 100 miles from here?" Rambert gave a gesture of surprise, but Thoreau had already left. Very early the next morning, Rambert telephoned the doctor. "Would you agree to let me work with you until I find the means to get out of town?" There was silence on the end of the line. Then, "Yes, Rambert. Thank you."